Hi, welcome back to another show. My name is Jeetu Jason, and you're watching Impact India. Why does India not innovate like other countries like China, South Korea, Japan, um, Israel, US, countries like that? Is it because we are poor? Is it because we have a low per capita GDP, or is it because of some other systemic issue or a cultural issue? There is an observation that countries that are above the $10,000 to $15,000 per capita GDP generally find it easy to innovate, but that is just an observation. It's not a law. There are plenty of countries who have above that who have a per capita GDP above $15,000 per person, but still don't innovate much. The many Slavic countries or European countries don't innovate that much compared to other nations who have a lower per capita GDP. So it's an observation, but it's not a hard rule. There's no rule that we India needs to wait till 2050 so that our per capita GDP rises up to $10,000 for us to start innovating things. We are a large nation with a lot of people and with a lower standard of living. Innovation in theory should be easier and cheaper to do in India than anywhere else because everything else is innovation would be expensive in China and US and other nations like that. So this observation that you need to be a per capita GDP of 10,000 to $15,000 uh, is the threshold for innovation. I don't buy that because plenty of countries below that threshold started to innovate. For example, Israel was innovative even before it reached that mark. China started innovating even before that mark. Japan started innovating even before that mark. So there are a lot of countries that are living proof that you don't need to wait to become rich in order to innovate. Even in a personal setting, you don't need to become rich to be innovative and inventive. You can start doing that even when you're poor. Now, I'm not denying that rich people find it easier to, or rich countries find it easier to innovate. Of course, it becomes easier as you become richer because you have more disposable income and can allocate capital as risk capital. When you're poorer, that's difficult. But innovation is usually not done by poor people in all these countries. The per capita sorry, excuse me, the R&D budget of China, Israel, US, South Korea is like about 2% of their GDP, and 70 to 90% of that funding comes from private corporations. So it's not poor people that are uh, doing the R&D in these countries. It's rich corporations anyway. But India is an exceptional country where rich people don't put their fair share of money into research and development. India spends 0.67% of its GDP on R&D, and 70% of that comes from the government, not the private sector. But in other countries, that comes from the private sector. Israel spends 90% of its R&D comes from private sector. China, 70%, even though it's a dictatorial country, 70% of its R&D budget comes from private corporations. So what is stopping our billionaires and corporations from putting their fair share into research and development? I don't think it's a per capita GDP issue because these companies are already rich. They are billion-dollar companies. Why are they not doing? Why is Infosys spending only 0.64% of its revenue on research and development? I think it's cultural. At this point, you have to address the elephant in the room. There is a cultural issue. We are not that inventive and innovative. The same goes for African countries. For some reason, Africa and India are not big on innovation. I don't know whether it's a racial thing or a genetic thing or a cultural thing. It's too soon to tell. But if this pace continues, at some point we'd have to ask the hard questions. And is there something wrong with us, genetically or culturally? If it is cultural, then it is changeable. If we can change that. And I do believe this is cultural because the consciousness of most Indians, especially rich ones, is about making money. It's not about innovation. Even the people who have the funds at their disposal to make a change or do the research and development, they don't fixate on this. They're not keen on this. They're not big on this. They don't even talk about this much. They talk about investment in infrastructure and this and that, but R&D talk or talk about innovation and inventions are far and few, between. I don't know why. That's just how we have been for quite some time, like hundreds of years actually. We were late to industrialization. Japan industrialized in the nick of time, and they avoided being colonized because of that. If we were big on innovation, we would have industrialized, especially because we were 25% of the GDP of the planet at that time. So if we wanted to industrialize, we had the money to do it. We just chose not to do it. Uh, I don't know, is it genetic or cultural? I think it's cultural because, you know, if we want, there's nothing really physically stopping us from innovating. There's nothing physically stopping Infosys and companies like that from allocating capital to research and development. There's literally nothing. So there is nothing stopping these companies from, allocating capital for research and development. If we wanted to be innovative right now, today in 2026, instead of waiting till 2050 to become a nation with a per capita GDP of 10,000 or $15,000, we can do that now. There's no rule in economics or biology that stops us from doing this. It's just a matter of will. This nation lacks the awareness and therefore the will to innovate. We're too focused on everything else and very little on this. If we really wanted to be a developed nation, we have to heavily focus on this. The awareness doesn't exist in people. That's what I think. And that's what I'm trying to do with this channel, to bring awareness about this issue that we need to heavily focus on innovation first, invent things. Human beings are different from animals for one reason: we are tool builders and tool users. That is the defining factor between, if you compare all the different cultures, races, civilization, people, countries, and compare with animals, the only defining factor is that we invent tools and use them at far greater rates than any other animal on this planet. So that is our superpower. That is why we are the apex predator of this planet. We're tool builders and tool users. If we don't double down on our strength as human beings, then humans that other human beings, other countries, other cultures that double down on this, that take advantage of this unique trait that humans have, is which is to build and use tools, they will win over us. The reason why we got colonized is because we did not focus our GDP on R&D, on research and development, on industrialization. And we're about to make that mistake again for the second time. And I don't want that history to repeat again. So I'm a little concerned, and that is what I'm trying to do with this channel. I'm trying to raise the consciousness of people who are watching to fixate more or focus more on research and development as opposed to just, uh, increasing the GDP for no apparent reason. If you're not going to focus your GDP on R&D, then why bother? We're going to get colonized again or get our ass whooped again. Okay, that's just my concern. I am concerned about this, and as you should be. If you share this concern, if you are also concerned about this, consider joining my Telegram group. I would like to know if there are other people like this in India who is concerned about R&D and the lack of it in this country. Anyway, that's it for today. I will see you in the next one. Until next time, bye.